Okay, right. Well, this talk is titled What God Went Wrong, and it's a quotation from Douglas Adams. Who knows Douglas Adams? The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, one of the inspirations behind Terry Pratchett and many modern things. I was really lucky when I was much younger in that I worked on one of the projects that Douglas Adams initiated. It was called H2G2, which was the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy Mark II, and it was a precursor to free Facebook. And the idea was that it was people on an online community making an online encyclopedia of things that weren't usually honoured. And the part that I worked in with a man called Richard Creasy, who was a colleague of Douglas's, was called 360, Changing the World by Degrees. And the idea was that we were working on Kofi Annan's principles for the United Nations and trying to do everything we could to stop poverty, famine, war, and all the things that are the real big problems with our planet right now, and the environment as well. But Douglas inspired me. He was one of my favourite authors, and I grew up listening to the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy on the radio. Now, Douglas was an atheist, as was Richard, his colleague on Digital Village, which became H2G2. But both of them had a purpose, and they had a faith. And what I'm going to talk to you about today is the real importance of having faith. I don't give a flying fuck, pardon me, what you believe in. I don't need you to be a Christian, I don't need you to be a Jew, I don't need you to be a Buddhist, but I do want you to understand that the way we humans are wired is we need something to believe in. And most of our religions have gone horribly wrong. And I find it really difficult saying that I'm a Christian nowadays, because Christianity has been responsible for some of the greatest evils on this planet. And I'm sorry. I don't think I did them unless it was a past life, and I'm not supposed to believe in those, but even so, I'm still very sorry. So the title of this talk is actually taken from Douglas's book, because Douglas really cared about this planet. And he really cared about the evolution of humanity. And even though he was a total atheist, he believed, as did Richard. And he wrote about a man called Oolong Kalufid, an alien. Did anybody remember Oolong Kalufid? He wrote 4 amazing books called Where God Went Wrong, Some More of God's Greatest Mistakes, Who Is This God Guy Anyway? And that about wraps it up for God. So this is basically the premise of this story today. It's going to be a series of storytellings, really. So, where did God go wrong? Well, he created humanity for a start. The planet would do very well without us. If we went, the planet would recover quite quickly and be perfectly happy. But without the planet, we're in deep shit. So probably the first mistake was us. But we've got here now, so let's do something about it. And I just wanted to say this thing about belief. It's really important to understand that this is scientific. There's something, I have to read it because I can't remember the word. We have something called a periductal grey in our spinal cord. It's in the brainstem at the back of the neck. The periductal grey. And it is the need to believe in something. And it's what makes us altruistic. It's wired into us. Unfortunately, it's right next to the amygdala, which is the reptilian part of the brain, which is also the ego. Now, ego gets a very bad rap. Ego, that part of the brain, is just repetitive of what we've done before. The best way to describe to you how the ego works is that, do you remember when you learnt to drive? Do you remember learning to drive? And do you remember how scary it was to start with? And if you had a manual car, having to work out how to steer and how to move the gears and how to move your feet, and it was really scary. And then you passed your test and you went out on the road for your first ever trip on your own, and you were probably terrified. So there you are driving, and you're really focusing on it. And you repeat this action again and again through your lessons, and then you pass your test. And then about 6 weeks after you passed your driving test, you find you drove round to your sister's and you didn't even know how you got there. And that's your ego, because the ego learns what to do on repetition, and then it does it automatically. It's utterly brilliant. It's also crap, but it's utterly brilliant. And the thing about the ego is it's what keeps us breathing in the middle of the night. It's what makes us remember how to get out of bed in the morning and how to walk and how to talk, because all these things are familiar to us. Now, the problem with the belief system is it gets mired into the ego. Am I making sense so far? Only a few people leaving. So, how did a religion of love get turned into a hideous killing machine? Because it did, didn't it? It really did. And if you say you're a Christian nowadays, you've got to really excuse yourself, because there's so much evil been done in the name of religion. And also, I have to excuse myself because as soon as I say I'm a Christian, people are going to associate that I'm aligned with Donald Trump. Donald Trump is not a Christian. None of the MAGA people are Christians. And the simple reason for that is, did you know Jesus never once asked us to worship him? Never once. He didn't give a rap whether we worshipped him or not. What he did ask us to do was follow him. Do what he did. Be kind to people. Be a healer. To look out for the poor, look out for the dispossessed, look out for the outsider. Jesus constantly taught that the outsider was actually more worthy than the people who ran the religious system.